Namaste, yogis. This is Adrienne with How Yoga Changed My Life, a podcast. Welcome. We're really excited today. I've got my partner in crime here, Nora.
Good morning.
Hello. And Deb.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Deb, thanks so much for being a part of our show. Deb, give our listeners a little intro about you.
Okay, I'll try to keep it really brief.
Doesn't have to be. Doesn't have to be.
All right, so my name is Deb Flashenberg, and I fell into yoga many moons ago, somewhere in my early 20s. Actually, I think even earlier, somewhere during college. I won't give the whole thing, but I've been doing yoga for now over like 32 years, if I do the math correctly. And I opened a yoga studio. Let me back up. I became a yoga teacher in my 20s, and then I decided I wanted to open a yoga studio. First, I was a singer dancer for many years, and then after opening a studio without any background in business, my degree's in musical theater, so really no background in business. My yoga studio is called Prenatal Yoga Center. We're based in New York City, and I've had it now for 23 years, a little more than 23 years.
That's so big, Deb. That is
That's
like
incredible.
Incredible. Because I was living in Chicago for a long time, and one of my friends owned a yoga studio, and he owned it for 35 years. And I was like, that's rare to see anybody in a yoga space besides like a franchise kind of thing, for 10 plus years.
It's what I started, and I just kept going. It's a love-hate relationship. I love it. It's hard. It's really, really hard.
Yes, it is.
Because it's a specific niche, during that time of opening it to even now, I've wanted to make sure that I'm really feeding the people that are coming into my space in a very specific time in their life, pregnancy and postpartum. So along the way, I've gotten many certifications besides different yoga certifications. I'm also a Lamaze childbirth educator, a spinning babies educator, a doula. Like, I just kept adding on because I thought the more I educated myself, the more I could support my students during their pregnancy and postpartum. And somewhere along the way, I had two kids.
How old are your kids now?
14 and 11. So I actually was teaching prenatal before I had my own kids.
Wow, that must have been really interesting too, because it's like the shift of like, because everyone's like, you have no idea until you have a child. You have no idea until you have your child. I bet, how was that for you to make that jump?
I had an idea because
you were surrounded by it.
Yeah, and I had been a labor support doula. So for those, because it's interesting about today's conversation is typically I do birth podcasts, but this is a yoga podcast, which is really fun because it's really my passion and what I started so many years ago. But for those that are listening that don't know what a doula is, it's someone that goes to births and supports people, not in a medical way, but emotional and educational and physical support. And so I had been attending births for over 10 years. So I'd seen over 100 births. And so I had a good idea, and I knew what I wanted and didn't want. But the birth was really hard, harder than I was expecting. And I actually, in hindsight, can see that my practice and some of my other physical activities added to my challenging birth. And it's actually something that I've been really passionate about, using the yoga practice to add balance to the body instead of imbalance. I'm happy to, talk more about that if you'd want.
Yeah.
But it was a hard experience. And from that, my practice changed, how I taught changed. But I had seen births similar to mine, but it was the postpartum that I wasn't ready for.
I know. They don't tell you about that. I remember
Even though I had seen it, I didn't know.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, I used a birth doula for my first daughter, Campbell, when we lived out in Colorado, and she was an incredible human being and just incredible. And the having, like, I called it like my third party non-judgmental coach, right? Mm-hmm. And so like wherever I was in the stages of delivery, she would say, okay, or stages of labor, I guess. All right, here's your options. You can do this, that, or the other. It made me feel like I had a coach that wasn't going to try to push me in one direction. Like, oh, you need to get an epidural now, or you need to, do this, that, and that now. I really felt, secure in how I was going through it. But yeah, I mean, the pregnancy is one thing, but then as soon as they hand you the baby, it's like, oh shit, what do I do now?
That's kind of what I felt.
Yeah, I did for sure.
Even though I had held newborns and I'd been around this, because my birth was so hard and so just arduous mentally and physically, I was really at a state of depletion that all of a sudden we're like, okay, now we have this newborn. And now what do we do? And it took me, I had to do physical therapy for rehab for my pelvic floor, and I'm caring for this newborn. And it was tough. Postpartum was definitely something I wasn't expecting to be so hard.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, so you have kind of immersed yourself in supporting women throughout, prenatal, during, after, postpartum. So tell us your yoga origin story, where you birthed your yoga practice.
Okay. So I had done some yoga. I went to Boston Conservatory and we were, I was a singer dancer. So I really enjoyed.
Let's go back to that because my daughter,
sure.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but my daughter is really big into musical theater. She studied it in high school and she is obsessed with like music and theater and all that stuff. Yeah. So, I mean, did you grow up in New York?
No, I grew up outside of Boston, but my mom is from New York and my dad went to school. He went to Columbia. So we were back and forth to New York all the time because my grandparents were there. Nice. So while I didn't grow up there, I was there constantly. I still remember seeing Annie, because I'm in my 50s, seeing Annie on Broadway. And I still remember my mom like grabbing my hand and like, so think about when this was in New York. This was like late 70s, early 80s, like grabbing my hand and like pulling me down Broadway. Like, don't look around, don't talk to people. Exactly. Like I remember when New York was very gritty.
Yes.
So it's very, very different. But I grew up going to theater and I grew up in and out of the city all the time. And then I just loved singing and dancing, like from an early age. Like I remember coming out from seeing Annie, like in the car ride back to Boston, like singing all the wrong lyrics, but still singing everything. And I just, it was been a passion. And so I ended up getting my degree in musical theater. So I was always singing and dancing, and I did some yoga while I was at the conservatory, but it wasn't until I was doing summer stock. I don't remember exactly how old I was. I must have been in my early 20s. And one of the choreographers used yoga as our warm up. And that was when I'm like, oh, I really like this. And then I got a tour. And then after that, someone's like, oh, you have to meet this other person. She just did the tour and you're going to like her style. Now, the funny thing was, I call it my dirty yoga secret. And I know it might be a little judgmental, but it was Bikram yoga.
That's okay.
So this was
I had Bikram too. Yeah.
Okay. So
I think we've all dipped our toe in there.
I was going to say, I
something.
think that's in everybody's closet.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm not, like, this was back in like, I'm going to date myself again, like 1997, 98. Like it was a while ago. And so it started to be the point where when I started it, and this was also, the studio was in the theater district. It was on 8th and I don't even know what it was, 48th or something. So like right in the theater district. So it was mainly performers. And I'm a very flexible body naturally. I was more flexible in my 20s. But it was a very flexible body then. And they were all dancers and it was a great warm up for, in a sense. And it started to become to the point where I'm like, I should go take ballet, but I'd rather go take yoga. And it became this pull. And then I decided, okay, I'm going to go do the Bikram training. That was a turning point because I had a really negative experience during that training.
I'm dying to hear about that. I had one of my friends went to a Bikram training in, I want to say it was like in Hawaii or something that she had.
Oh yeah, this
traveled.
wasn't as exciting. This was just in 2000 in LA. Not as exciting as Hawaii. I would have liked Hawaii.
Yeah, but still, it was Bikram in LA in the 90s, which was the height of a lot of the beginnings.
All of it, yeah.
So I decided, okay, I'm going to go out and do this training. And while I was there, a couple things happened. One, I had met Bikram. I really did not like him.
Yeah.
I still remember a couple weird things. Like, we would be in this, and it wasn't even like a really pretty area. It was like a warehouse or
Mm.
like a garage that they made into a studio space, and like these makeshift like not even cafeterias, just like rooms where we could eat. And it wasn't great. And so we were all standing there, and there's like 200 people in
Yeah.
the training, which is crazy because my trainings, we max out at 16
Yeah.
because I want to talk to people and get to
Right.
know them. And so there's maybe like 20 of us in this little eating area with the table. And Bikram was sitting in just a regular chair, not in his like throne. And he was handing people a brush to brush his hair.
Yeah.
It was weird.
Yeah.
And at that point, I'm like, this is weird. This
Mm-hmm.
is really weird. And then I had a really unfortunate experience that my dad had an accident and died during the training.
Oh my gosh.
And I was out in LA and my parents were in Boston. So I'm like, I need to leave. I need to leave and go. And they said, well, if you go, you can't come back. And at this point, I had already paid, it was several $1,000s.
It's really
yeah.
expensive.
And I had put my life on hold. I think it was like 6 or 10 weeks. It was something
Yeah, that's what
long.
she said. It was like 8 to 10 weeks or something. It's a long
And
time.
it was like, it was out there. So I put my life on hold. I had subletted my apartment. I wasn't auditioning for things. I'm like, well, I can't. And they're like, you can come back. We have to pay for it again. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Oh my God.
So it's insane. I think if I remember correctly, I went out twice. I went back and forth twice. Once my dad had his accident, and then once when he died a week later. And during the flights home, I remember like memorizing the Bikram monologue because I wanted to show that I could go and come back and not miss a beat. What I realized in hindsight is I probably didn't even to tell them I left because there were so many of us that they
probably wouldn't have
wouldn't
noticed.
even noticed.
Yeah.
But I just remember that negative experience and thinking, oh my gosh, wow, he is like I was 26. I'm like, my dad just, he was in a coma and then he died and they were giving me a hard time.
That's disgusting.
That's disgusting.
It is.
So anyway, so I finished that training. I actually finished it. And then I taught it for about a year and realized I really didn't like it.
Exactly. It's like
Really.
once the curtains peeled back on that practice, you're like, what the hell?
I realized I really didn't like it. Like, I wanted to be able to look at the bodies in front of me. Remember, I came from a dance background, so
Yes.
I like looking at bodies and how they move. And you can't really move from the practice or like the monologue. And then I started to really think about the biomechanics of what they were telling us
Yes.
to say. And I'm like, it doesn't actually make sense.
No, it made no sense. It's like, here's a pose that he looked good in, and now you need to look just like him in this pose. It's
And just
stupid.
like, I remember that first big back bend, fall back, way back, go back. I'm like, well, you got to lift out of
And
your lower
change.
back.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, you have to like lengthen down through your tailbone, ground your feet, lift out of your lower back. Like they wouldn't let us, do that.
No.
And then they had that one, like the Paschimottanasana, they had you scoop back. I'm like, well, that's actually tucking your tailbone.
Exactly.
And then I'm like, and then you have to come forward. I'm like, that doesn't make sense.
No.
And so
No.
I said, like, what if we move forward to help tip the pelvis?
Exactly.
And they're like, no, you can't say that. So I realized that I didn't understand it. It went against what I believed anatomically and
Right.
biomechanically.
Right. Well, that's the thing. Like, I thought the same way. Like, when I really kind of dove into my practice in a different way, I was at a Bikram studio with my daughter, and she was young. She was like 8 or 9. And so we were taking, kind of like little group classes together, non-heated. And then as we started to develop our practice, she had us doing wall walks, like walking back, like back bends against the wall, coming back up and doing it like 10 to 12 times in a row.
Oh, wow.
And, we could do it. We were exhausted. It felt terrible, but we were doing it. And the whole time it was like you just said, fall back, go back, and change. Like that.
Yeah.
It's like trigger, right?
And like people are holding their breath. I remember during the training, like someone fell back and passed out. Like it didn't seem the healthiest. And so I talked to someone at the studio. I'm like, this isn't feeling right. and someone mentioned prenatal. So at this point I'm like 28 or so 27. And someone mentioned prenatal. I'm like, oh, that sounds interesting. So I mentioned it to my mom who did marketing, and she's like, ah, you're onto something, because this was her reasoning. And I still remember it to this day. She's like, people spend money on weddings and their pregnancy.
Yep.
And I'm like, and then she's like, and not just spend money, but they're going to take care of themselves.
Yes.
That's a direction. I'm like, oh, okay. So I ended up finding a place. It was actually in Seattle that I studied. And then I came back and I shifted away from Bikram. I tried a little of everything. I tried Ashtanga. I tried Jivamukti. Now, this was like 2000s in New York City. And
Yeah.
it felt really like grounded and rich in yoga. I never really got into the whole Dharma Mitra, but he was there. Like, so I did Ashtanga, I did Jivamukti, I ended up at Om, and I studied with Shiva Ray, who did a lot of visiting to the East Coast. So I really dove. Oh, and then maybe like 5 years later, I did a lot of Iyengar, and I still do Iyengar. So I got a lot of certifications along the way because I wanted to run away from Bikram.
Yeah.
And so I studied with Cindy Lee. I mentioned Shiva Ray. I went to one of her Indian retreats. Like I just immersed myself and wanted to study. And I loved it. So I still very much, my style kind of comes from Shiva in the way that she sequences. I love how she sequences, but then it has a lot of the Iyengar background of understanding how to build into peak pose and look at the alignment. And then Cindy from Om really gave me, which is sad, it's not even there anymore. It was one of my favorite places. Really gave me a sense of how to create community. She did an excellent job. So all of that kind of mishmash is how I created my studio. But it was an interesting kind of zigzag of background. So that was a very long answer.
But you know what? No. But what's great about that, though, is that I think you hit the nail on the head. We all get into one lineage, right? And having that one lineage to study is great because it can sometimes give you a really good foundation, right? Depending upon what you're studying. You know, like an Iyengar, Ashtanga, like all of those backgrounds give you the basic foundations of the postures, understanding them. And then what's great is the fact that you didn't limit yourself to just one lineage. And that's where I think a lot of yoga teachers will kind of falter a little bit because they're not taking the time to open their eyes to the fact that there are so many different types of yoga and there's so many different bodies out there. So the more that you learn about different lineages and different ways, like one of my favorite things about Iyengar, it's like, here's the pose and here's your body. When you first start, you mold the pose in your body. And then once you get to the point, your body can then mold into the pose, right? So it's like finding those ways to connect with the uniqueness of every person that you come in contact with.
And that's what I wanted. And that's what was so not available in Bikram. It was like you had to make your body into shape, and sometimes you shouldn't. And then because it was constant repetition, like I would see people get injuries. We weren't allowed to offer modifications, which seemed insane to me.
Well, and even if you think about like comparing it to Ashtanga back then too, it was like, let's force your body into it. Let's assist you and adjust you into ways that are like cranking on your spine and injuring people and popping joints. You know, it's like that's the early 90s or, you know, late 90s, 2000s even too. It's like that was a real strict, it was follow my way, right? Not the yoga way.
And I got injured from a few people that, like some teachers that were doing adjustments to the point I just like, please don't touch me.
I know.
And I remember like one of them, my hamstring is still, you know, this many years later, he had us doing a forward bend against the wall, and the teacher laid on the floor, put his heels at my sit bones and reached my sit bones up so that my spine would get further down. I am very flexible. I was not the person that needed that. And it felt like in hindsight, I'm like, this was more about him showing how he can adjust than what my body needed. Because if he looked at me, I was practically pancaked anyway. I didn't need that extra adjustment. And I had the same thing in like a twist. I'm like, I'm done twisting. Like, this is as far as we're going.
I got injured and I still to this day, and we're talking, you know, almost 15 years later in a Bikram class, or maybe even longer, I was doing half moon or crescent, you know, side bend. And they're going, keep going, go. You know, what do they say in that pose? What's the trigger words?
Oh, that one I don't remember.
Like,
I just remember the way back, fall back.
Yeah,
it's
way
probably
back.
like reach, whatever.
Yeah. Right. And my floating rib down below, like my 12th rib, dislocated. And
Ooh.
I, to this day, still have issues with that rib. And my rib cage on that side is like slightly open more. It's crazy. But that's because I was not listening to my body. I was listening to someone else tell me that I should be doing something that everybody else in the room should also be doing, which makes no sense. All of our bodies are different.
As I hear you saying this, it's something that we try so hard in our prenatal classes about self-advocacy. And I did not advocate for myself.
No.
I was also pretty young and didn't even know how to. And kind of can bring it to the prenatal. We want to teach our students about advocating for themselves, because if they can do it on the mat, they may be able to do it in the bigger situation of that white coat syndrome of where they have to advocate for themselves in a hospital. And it's really hard. It's one of those things that I think so many of us know. We're like, I don't think I should be doing this, but someone's telling me to do this. And so self-advocacy is something really important to me, because I have not in many cases, and it has come back to kind of bite me in the butt.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, I tell my clients now, even like when I'm working one-on-one with people, I'm like, I don't have x-ray vision. I can see your body and I can see some things, but your body isn't the same built as every other body here. There's differences. So you need to, I say that you need to advocate for yourself. You need to use your noticing muscles to see what you're feeling so that you can then tell me, because most people, you know, they just are moving and they don't know what they're feeling. Nora and I had a conversation about this the other day. Nora was saying, what do you do with your clients when you know that they're not really doing it in the exercise in their body?
What did you say? What was the answer?
What did you do, Nora?
Yeah.
Remember,
I have
you
no
say,
idea.
You say,
I don't remember this conversation at all. But lovely. I'm glad that I helped somebody somewhere.
No, you said something like, you'll ask them, like, do you feel it here or here?
Oh, yeah. So with muscle recognition, instead of asking them what they feel because they don't have it, they don't understand what they're feeling, I give them an option. Do you feel this more in your hamstring? Do you feel it more in your butt? And then they'll tell, oh, I don't know. And then they feel like they have to tell me it's one or the other. And if you're really good and you listen really well, you can tell when they're just picking one because they panic and don't actually have an answer for you. But it helps them to identify where the target is supposed to be, at least. So it gives you a region. And then as you keep going, of course, recognition helps.
Yeah.
I love that you did that, because I feel like I've had this conversation with a lot of people, a lot of yoga teachers, that I think it's a little bit, I'm going to maybe get a lot of hate mail for this, a little bit of a cop out when people in yoga teachers like, oh, just do what feels right. But if you've never had the conversation with your body to know what feels right, like if you don't have the awareness, and that's what, especially for pregnant folks, if they're going to a general class, oh, just do what feels good to you. Just do what feels right. They may not know that. They haven't had a conversation with their body.
Right.
Yeah. Especially if it's your first pregnancy, you have no idea what this alien body feels like. You're feeling all these new things. And yeah, that's terrible advice.
Ego that's maybe telling them this is okay to do, or is it they want to keep up with the rest of the class, or they don't want to. There's a little loss of not having the practice they once had. I mean, I know I felt that I had built my practice and it was something I was incredibly proud of. And it was really hard to step away from certain poses. Right. So I think it's one of the biggest cop-outs is to say, oh, just do what feels good. Just listen to your body.
Yeah. I agree with you 100%.
Well, and also you have people that are afraid to disappoint the instructor. I mean, like on the simplest level, they want to do what's, they want to be the A student. They've been that way the whole time, but now their body's betraying them again and they don't understand.
Yeah.
It can be disheartening.
It is disheartening. And I think too, like, we are so disembodied in our normal ways of living. Like, we are constantly looking outside of ourselves for approval. We're constantly looking to what's next for me, what's next for them, what's next for, my body. How do I get to be like that person on the mat next to me, right? Like, I want to be able to do what that person does, instead of where in my body am I strong? Where in my body am I not connected? And how do I make the whole body be mine like it should be? Right. And I should own my body. And I feel like it's so interesting to me. Like, I'm Natalie's husband. is a physical therapist. And so I've been practicing gyrotonic, and I'm in my apprenticeship right now. Are you familiar with it? Because you were in the music theater area.
I know, yeah.
Yeah. So
I do know. Very circular movements.
yes. Like really, really fun, really cool. But it's for me, it was very hard to kind of get out of my comfort zone to feel like I knew what I was doing when I'm teaching it. And so I had him come over yesterday, and I ran him through like an intro session, and he and I just had like an hour-long conversation about how everybody is different, and that like it's more about like make them feel good in their body, right? Show them how they can feel good in their body, and don't be restrictive or prescriptive with it, right? Or, making sure that you say, how does this feel, right? Where do you feel it? If you don't feel it here, let me give you some suggestions, But like making them feel good in their body is what our jobs are, right? People ask me like, what do you do for a living? It's like, I co-create an experience so that others can alleviate their own suffering.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. I think about what I do as trying to help create balance in their bodies so that they can have an easier birth. It's very pointed in a specific direction.
Yeah, Deb, how did you since you said you got into prenatal before you were even pregnant the first time, how did you take your real life experience of feeling all the things that change when your body changes to create another human? And what did you take from that experience, and how did you apply it to your practice and your clients and your people after?
I was the worst student for my first pregnancy. I was like,
Aren't we all?
Yeah.
Aren't we all?
If I had me in a prenatal class, now I went to a couple prenatal classes. I usually try to like hide in the back because there weren't a lot of prenatal classes or places that did it besides what I did. And I didn't want people to know me, and people knew me. So that was hard. That was hard for me. So I was really great with what they told me in prenatal. I stuck with what I was told in prenatal, but I also continued to go to my Iyengar classes. Now I went to the level 4 classes, which were mainly advanced practitioners and teachers. And if I saw myself and I was the teacher, I'd be so irritated with myself. I'd be like, oh my God, lady, just like stop. Just
like how? Give me an example of how you would be irritating.
So I knew not to do deep back bends because I didn't want to put that pressure into the front of my body, the linea alba, that connective tissue.
Right.
I didn't want to compress my lower back because I'm naturally very anterior pelvically tilted. But I kept doing like, I could still do all these really juicy chest openers. And I'm like, so I'm going to go there. But I took it I have a lot of thoracic mobility as well. And what I realized is that I created some more diastasis than I probably needed to at my upper. Now, a lot of people have that abdominal separation near their navel, but because I was really careful not to do that there, I worked on so much of the upper body, and the rectus attaches up in the rib cage. And so from overdoing that rib flare, in hindsight, I'm like, oh, why did I do that? I also, at that point in my yoga understanding of birth and the biomechanics of the pelvis, one of the biggest things, this is a little bit of a sidetrack, that irritates me in yoga is it's so focused on external rotation. And that is great for opening the pelvic inlet where baby goes in. And from years of dancing, I have external rotation more than anyone needs.
Oh, yeah. We could probably tell when you're in class when you do a down dog kick and your toes are kicked out to the side, right?
I mean, like, I have so much external. Like when I'm in Baddha Konasana, my knees are flat.
Yeah.
Like those are my hips. I've always had those hips, but they were worse. And yoga tends to celebrate flexibility and external rotation. Now, what that does is it creates tension in the glutes, especially the piriformis, and it's not having balance. We want the pelvis for birth to open in the top, in the middle, and the bottom, and internal rotation, which helps the sacrum have mobility, and for the outlet, and also all that external rotation, usually the glutes are kind of sleepy, and then the pelvic floor has to pick up the slack. And so for my birth, my pelvic floor was incredibly tight. My psoas was incredibly tight. While I was able to get the baby into the inlet, the rest was very long. My pushing was forever. I just didn't have that spaciousness.
Me too.
I know, I'm telling you, the yoga practice needs to be approached differently for pregnancy.
Absolutely.
So
training in general, for sure.
It really, really does. And so that's something that I've been incredibly passionate about is we need to use the way I use yoga for pregnancy. It's a tool. It's a tool to create balance. All levels of the pelvis, balance the pelvis, balance the rib cage, get the psoas, get the nervous system. It's a tool. It's not just the practice. It's part of the preparation. So kind of going back to your question, it's for my first, I felt the feelings. I had a lot of flexibility already, but I wasn't very graceful about accepting the changes I need to make.
Yeah.
My second, having had such a hard birth and having had such a long rehab, I approached very differently. And my whole teaching of prenatal yoga changed because of my first. So while it was horribly unfortunate that it was so long and I had such rehab, it was a huge catapult of change that I'm actually appreciative of because it's now helped thousands of students.
Right. So Deb, go back to your, because it's interesting that you said that about like, I, was able to get her down, was your first a girl?
My first one was a boy. Yeah.
A boy, okay.
A boy, yeah.
So when you were able to get him down and set, ready to launch, right? I went through the same thing. I think I pushed for like an hour and a half.
I pushed for 5 hours.
Oh my God. Well, no, I pushed for like an hour and a half. And then like they had to give me, Pitocin because my contractions stopped. But of course, like I had a doula and I had I wanted a mirror. Okay. Because
because you can see.
I wanted to be able to see what was going on. And almost in that way, I thought like I could give myself a way of being like, this is what's happening. So the feelings that you have are now attached to the vision that you can see through the mirror. You can see what's happening. And I know that's might gross people out, but it wasn't because I wanted to like be gross about it. I wanted to understand what I was feeling by seeing it. And I remember like the doctors are like, push, and I push and they're like, oh my gosh, you can see your hair, so much hair, so much hair. And then I would, stop pushing, open my eyes and nothing would be there because she just gets sucked back in, And I remember that feeling that they gave me Pitocin. I took a nap for like 45 minutes and I pushed for another hour and a half. So she came out with like a big bruise on the top of her head, and it wasn't traumatic to me because I had support there of the doula and she was able to walk me through what was happening and never made me feel fearful. But Campbell had like the umbilical cord wrapped around her throat like 3 times.
My daughter had that too, and which is actually makes you feel better. About a third of babies have that. It's called the nuchal cord. So a third of babies have that. But yeah, it can be a little overwhelming. But yeah, I think that unfortunately, unless we really look at the yoga practice, I think it can be very hindering to the body in preparation for birth. It's very hamstring lengthening oriented and it's not hamstring strengthening. And one thing that we actually put in a lot of our prenatal class, not a lot, like all of our methodology, is a lot of posterior chain strengthening. So I actually slip more kind of functional movements in there. I don't use weights, but we'll do like Romanian deadlifts with the idea of like engaged arms and really grounding the feet. I want to get the hamstrings fired up. I want to get the glutes fired up because if we're only focused on flexibility, we're not helping the pregnant body be more balanced because we've had that forward belly. The back body is just going to tighten and that's going to be hard for birth. That pelvic floor is going to be really tight, especially if there's a school that teaches Mula Bandha, which I think is highly misunderstood.
Very. I think the bandhas in general are very misunderstood. Every time somebody brings it up, I'm like, okay, explain it to me.
Yeah. And so I don't love the idea that people come in thinking, oh, I'm just going to engage the pelvic floor. I'm like, well, you're just going to tighten it more. And that's going to be hard for baby through the mid pelvis and the outlet. So we do a lot of posterior chain strengthening. We try to get all the directions of the pelvis working. We try to have a fluid pelvis. It's a lot more strengthening with some lengthening, but it has to be about the combined work. And I think that a lot of yoga does not have that strength. I mean, some people, again, I love Iyengar, but you look at some of them, like their quads are solid because there's so much quad work.
Yes.
But what about the glutes and hamstrings? We need to have balance.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of, sorry, I'll get off my soapbox.
No. We love it. We're jumping up on with you. Nora loves this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. This is what we're preaching every day. Like it's balance in the body, balance in each joint, balance in each bone, balance. Yeah, it's
Well, and what do they teach you in a typical 200-hour yoga teacher training about the third, trimesters of pregnancy or prenatal? They have to like
They
cover a
probably
little
just
bit.
say don't twist, I'm
Don't
guessing.
twist. Don't lay flat on your back. And the only thing that they really talk about is the hormone release. I think it's a hormone release, right? The relaxin.
Relaxing is at conception.
Right. And that happens. And then next thing you know, because for me, I at least knew about that for my first pregnancy. So I didn't push it because I'm already hypermobile. And so I was very like cognizant of like connecting my muscles, right? And trying to do that. But I remember being in a teacher training with a girlfriend of mine who was pregnant 36 weeks, and she was in Malasana pretty much the entire time because it felt good in her body. And I don't know how that really worked out for her, but I mean, she's still an amazing yoga teacher and owns a studio, blah, blah, blah. But, we do these things thinking that, this is what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to externally rotate our hips so we can birth a baby. Like, how many times have you heard someone say, well, back in the day, like when they didn't have hospitals, they'd go out in the woods and birth the baby with an external rotation,
Well, squatting is not bad for pushing because it actually, if you're squatting with your feet turned out, okay, but I would try to do the feet more parallel. But when the knees are actually past 90, it actually does widen the sit bones. And if you can get that tailbone out of the way, but we need to get to that point. So we want all the directions. And I'm so glad to hear that even the 200-hour teaching about relaxing, because I feel like I did not hear that until I started studying yoga. And then one thing that also the yoga practice can do is SI pain, sacroiliac pain.
Oh my God, big time.
And pubic pain.
Yes.
Some of the poses can worsen it, especially the beloved pigeon pose. I love pigeon. Don't get me wrong. I love pigeon.
Yeah.
But it is, while it can feel great in the moment because it's stretching the piriformis, which can be a culprit of SI pain, it's adding more torsion to the pelvis, and then someone's SI joint hurts more. I think that's one of my biggest, I'm going to say grievances, but also concerns, that people will try yoga when pregnant, and it's not necessarily the fault of the teacher. They just haven't been given the information.
Right.
But then they actually can add more imbalance to their body and more pain.
Absolutely.
So that's my big concern with a lot of 200-hour trainings that don't really, and they don't have time. I get it. Like, there's so much to learn in a 200-hour.
The one thing I took away from the 200-hour that I went through was when you're pregnant and or if you have a pregnant student, the first thing that you ask them is, have you spoken to your doctor? Is it okay that you practice yoga?
But the doctors aren't going to know.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, so that's my get out of jail free card because I have a pregnant woman in my class. So now it's like, well, her doctor said she could do it. I'm just going to tell her not to do twists. She has to do open. She can't lay on her back or her belly, and to watch the big deep folds or big stretches. It's like, that's not very responsible.
Yeah, there's so much more.
Yeah,
and unfortunately, I don't know when it can be taught, taught. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, I think pregnancy is really not the time when you should start to try and take care of yourself. You're a little behind the game at that point. And unfortunately, we do see that a lot in our field, the personal training and Pilates world. What about for you? Do you find that people come to you? Oh, I'm newly pregnant and I've never exercised a day in my life, but now's the time, And how do you handle that situation? What do you counsel? What do you tell them?
So we do get a lot of people. I rarely get someone that's like, I've never exercised. Okay. New York City is a walking city. So you are getting people that usually at least walking around a fair amount.
Right.
So I do find just by default, you may have a little bit more physicality. What I get is a lot of folks that have never done yoga. Usually those that have, well, I wouldn't say usually, I'd say it's about 30% of the folks, 30 to 40% of folks have not taken yoga that come to the studio, and the rest have done yoga, but they don't know what to do. So when I get those that haven't done yoga before, I'm very clear on how I instruct the poses. I also, and this might be a bit of controversy because I know not everyone's for this, I demonstrate a lot because I think a lot of folks will get overwhelmed with just verbal direction. And especially if I'm so specific and they've never done yoga. So I'm very clear and concise and efficient with with the terms, with how I'm going to direct someone. But then I'm also doing it. We also, being New York, we have a lot of folks that English is not their first language. So if I only gave it to them,
Right.
you know,
Absolutely.
and it's so specific that I think it would be overwhelming. So I demonstrate a lot. I this is something I make sure my teacher trainees understand. Look at your students, like really look at your students, because that is actually going to tell you the cues you need to give.
Absolutely.
You know, that was actually something kind of going back to my Bikram days. I still remember this. There was a Mother's Day that there was a class that nobody could teach, and I was doing work study and I hadn't even done the training yet. And they're like, Deb, you're going to teach this. And I'm like, what? Like, you know it well enough. And I was terrified. And this teacher, I cannot remember his name, but he was like an old school Bikram teacher. He's like, look at your students, and that's going to tell you what you need to say. You know the poses, and you know what they should be doing or shouldn't be doing. And so just look at them, and then you're going to know the cues to give. It's not about memorizing, it's about seeing. And I'm like,
100%.
that was probably the best piece of advice I ever got. And
Oh,
so I
yeah.
keep telling my teachers, because I can't tell you how many new, and I get it. It's anxiety, it's nerves, it's insecurity that will like teach looking above or even closing their eyes. Like, if you need to look at your students. So kind of going back to what you said, for the new students, I'm really trying to see them and share what I'm seeing in their body. And again, being concise and efficient with the cues and also demonstrating it. So that's how I find I break through to that. I'm also a huge believer in yoga props because I think it adds support. I love props.
Yes.
I'm a prop whore.
A
Give me a
wall
prop.
of props.
Yeah, give me a prop. I don't care.
Yep.
Props are the best tools for a beginner or an advanced yogi. 100%.
I've been doing yoga for 32 years. I love my props.
I love them. Yep.
I'm like, could I reach the floor in triangle? I could, but sometimes my left SI joint is a little cranky, and a block's going to just help that.
And it's going to stabilize me. And then I might be able to open my chest more. I might be able to reach higher, right? Like, it's like
Yeah.
when I hear, and where I work now, one of the people that's high up is like anti-prop. And I'm like, what? Like what you said earlier about, the Bikram and kind of having the script and knowing, what to say. One of my biggest pet peeves when I first started as a teacher and listening to other people teach, because, as soon as you start teacher training, all of a sudden, being a student in class is a hard thing to reconnect with, because your teaching brain or teacher brain is starting to turn on and you're listening to what they're saying and how they're holding the class. And so it would drive me crazy when someone would say, like, inhale, mountain pose, reach your arms up. It's like, dude, my arm's already up, right? Like, what are you saying? You're just going through a script. You're not present. You're not teaching to who's in the room, and it's like, look around at your students and see what you see. And then the cues come naturally.
Yeah, I mean, I have to break that down when I do. So the teacher training we do, you have to have a 200-hour training.
Right.
Because the prenatal training, if we're going to modify and adjust bodies, they need to have the foundation. I can't teach that with everything else. But I have to break some bad habits. So sometimes they're just saying something. I'm like, why are you saying that? What does that mean? And sometimes it's like, well, that's what I was taught. I'm like, okay, well, let's break that down, because I'm really a believer in understanding the foundation, because I can't go over every single pose that they're going to encounter. But if we understand the anatomy and the physiology, they then can say, wait, let me actually break this down and take what I know about the body and then look at the pose.
Yes.
I really want the teachers to think and not. And when I hear them start to repeat me, I'm like, well, what does that mean? What did I say and what does it mean? Instead of just repeating what I said.
Yeah, I've led a couple of and written co-written a bunch of 200 hours in the past. And then I had my own 95-hour kids yoga teacher training. And then my friend and I just started our 300-hour that we led. I guess it was like last year, maybe, I can't remember, last year or the year before. And what I've recognized is that, you need to give them the ability to answer the question, like, engage your core. how?
What's that mean?
How?
Yeah.
How do I do that? Right. And then it's like making them think about it. Like, what action, right? We want to see an energetic transaction happen on the mat when we give a cue. And I'm a real big proponent of action verb, your body part, and then the direction you want them to go, right? Cueing from the ground up, looking at the body in thirds, so that way you start with the foundation of the pose. So if you're in warrior one, what are the things you're going to say about the feet, right? What are you going to say about the lower body, the middle, the upper? How do you express the pose? How do you extend the energy lines of the pose, right? And being able to kind of see the transaction happen. Because if you say something and nothing happens, why did you say it? How can you change it?
And then where was there maybe a miscommunication that if you say something and nothing's happening, then what's another way you need to express it because it didn't land? I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or you say something and something else happens in front of you and you're like, whoa, that's not what I was asking, where I was taking you.
Absolutely.
Let's go back.
Yeah. Exactly. And you're like, we got to rethink that.
Exactly. There's some
wrong word.
And like, what did we hear? Like 10 to 15% of what we say is actually heard in a class. You know, I mean, I'm sure you've had it, Deb, when like you've had a conversation or you've had a yoga student for a while and, you know, you're telling them the same thing that you've been saying for years, like look forward when you're in this pose, look forward. And then all of a sudden they come into class, they're like, oh my gosh, I took class the other day and this teacher said to look forward and I did it. I finally got the pose. I'm like, motherfucker, I've been asking that, telling you that pose for years and that cue for years. But they have to be open. They have to be willing and they have to be ready to hear the cue.
I also think there's so many, that's why I try to be concise with what, again, I'm not silent, but you know, I try not to have too much flowery language.
Right.
Because I think we're so inundated with information at us. I remember not long ago, I had a student who was with me for like 20 weeks of her pregnancy. So my shelf life with students are going to be different. You know, I don't get them for years and years.
Right.
But I had been teaching her for like literally 20 weeks. And we're talking about the pelvic floor. And we talk about who should engage and who should let it try to get a little more supple. That might be overly engaged, hypertonic.
I was going to say hypertonic versus hypo, right?
Yeah. So I had been talking about that. I give it the spiel in every class because I have new students. And at one point, she's like, oh, wait, so I actually fit that. So I shouldn't be engaging. I'm like, well, what have you heard me say? And she and I had great banter. I'm like, what have you been hearing me say for the last 20 weeks? She's like, I wasn't really listening. I was just engaging. I'm like, oh my God, and she's like, she was really funny. She ended up doing her birth story on our podcast, but I just loved her honesty. She's like, I wasn't really listening. And I was like, thank you for being so honest. Yeah. And so she only had a couple weeks of this. She was like 37 weeks at this point. And she's like, okay, I'm going to stop. And then when she did her birth story, she's like, my doctor said I had perineum of steel. I'm like, I'm sure you did. Kept engaging. But I love that she was so honest. She's like, I heard you, but didn't hear you. She's like, I wasn't really listening.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. Let's talk about the pelvic floor, right? We don't have to go into all of it, but the idea that like, if I read somewhere, and don't quote me, I'm probably wrong, and y'all can Google it afterwards, but I heard something that wasn't until like the late 2000s, the early 2000s, that a actual anatomical drawing had been done of the internal and external clitoris.
Oh, that I don't know.
I don't know for sure, but we'll have to Google it and fact check it. But it makes me understand even more about, you know, the fact that what's going on up inside of us, no one knows. It's just a dark black hole of mystery of womanhood. You know, it's like, we don't talk about the different muscles of the pelvic floor. Guess what, boys? You have a pelvic floor too. Yeah. Yours is different.
Absolutely.
But you still have one. And we don't talk about that area. And really, that's your seed center.
Mm-hmm. Well, I bring out, when I teach, I have two pelvises with me. I have a bony pelvis and I have a pelvis with a pelvic floor because I need to pull it out for students to see what I'm talking about. Yeah. I pull out the bony one when we talk about, you know, where pelvic pain is, because someone will be like, oh, I have pain down there. And so like, is it here on the pubic bone or are you feeling it? And I'm like, or is it more in your pelvic floor? Or they're like, okay, here's your SI joint. Here's how the pelvis opens. But when it comes to teaching about the pelvic floor, I pull out my pelvic floor with the muscles. Yeah. So they understand the pelvic floor is more than just stopping the flow of urine. I mean, that's right. The unfortunate thing is care providers, you know, obstetricians or surgeons, they're very good at what they do, but the biomechanics of the pelvis and the pelvic floor tone or lack of tone is not their wheelhouse.
Right.
That's for a PT or someone. And unfortunately, too many care providers was like, oh, you're pregnant, make sure you do 100 Kegels a day. And we
Right.
know that if your muscles are already short and tight, and that also has to do with your nervous system. And I'm going to
Hmm.
talk about my New York folks, probably have, a little bit of a overly engaged nervous system.
Right.
We're on
Right.
kind of that fight or flight
High
all the
alert.
time,
Yeah.
that the muscles are already short. So if we're shortening them even more without learning how to relax, we're going to see harder births. We're going to see more pelvic pain. And unfortunately, you can have incontinence with a hypertonic pelvic floor and a hypo. So just like, oh, I
Hmm.
peed myself, I better do more Kegels, is actually doing a disservice.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
So I think we're getting more education. I'm hoping more care providers are referring people out to either prenatal yoga or pelvic floor PTs and just not giving that blanket statement. But
Right.
I'm still hearing it and it makes me sad.
It does. It makes me really sad.
Yeah. How much did you learn about yourself between pregnancy one and pregnancy two?
Hmm.
Oh, so much.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Isn't it? It's like, oh crap, yeah. You learn all this stuff from having the changes that happen during pregnancy. Then you have to heal from what
Yeah.
just happened to you.
Hmm.
And then, oh crap, here it goes again. And now how am I going to change what I did the first time
Oh,
or
I
didn't
mean,
even
I
know about?
was so different. And the crazy thing was, I was with a midwife for both and a doula. And again, this was also education just amongst the birth world
Yeah.
that nobody said, hey, Deb, let's take a look at your body. You're already hypermobile.
Hmm.
You were a dancer. You have a very advanced yoga practice. What might be imbalance? Like that wasn't a
Yeah.
conversation back
Right.
then.
Oh my. It's
Right.
still not
And
all the time either, which is horrible.
I
Right.
think it's more now, but maybe not in the yoga world, but
Right.
in my little birth world, it's starting to become more of a conversation.
That's great.
But because it was such a problem, I had to look and be like, what happened? Why did it go that way? And from my own experience, and I worked with a PT, and then I got really curious. And the PT not only did have to rehab my body, she really took me under her wing, and like we would talk about
Mm.
understanding the pelvis and the pelvic floor and the psoas. And so then I took this really deep dive and I ended up doing a pelvic floor yoga teacher training. And I went really deep into like
Yeah.
learning everything I could. So by the time I got pregnant with my second, everything had changed. My whole approach had changed. I do kind of feel badly that I didn't have this knowledge for the first 9 years of teaching,
Yeah.
but it's changed now.
But everything
But
changes. And that's yoga, though, right? Like you have to
Absolutely.
give yourself that grace and space. I mean, I still think about the fact that I was like, no way can you go from open to closed chain in a yoga practice. Like
yeah,
I was always that girl for years until I was like, duh, like you can do that. You just have to cue it safely.
yeah.
So during that, is that when you figured out that you needed to pay more attention to internal rotation rather than
Oh yeah.
just letting your everything externally rotate all the time?
Oh yeah. I mean, it really like talk about 180. Like that's when I'm like, okay, we need to understand how do we lengthen the pelvic floor? How do we support the pelvic floor? How does it get responsive? What's going on with the psoas? Like I really took a deep dive. I love anatomy. Like
Me too.
Yeah.
You're talking
it
to
is
two
like my
geeks here. We are big time geeks. Big time.
I mean, the fact that my students now will be like, I call it the SI family. They know, they're like, I'm in the SI family, and they know what that is. Or they'll be like, I want psoas opening. I'm like, these are from people that didn't know this when they walked in.
Yeah.
And because we make it part of the culture of the studio, and like we literally behind the desk, we have a pelvis. I want people to know that like the whole, it's going to sound kind of dorky, but the whole idea of balance is throughout our studio amongst our teachers. If we work in well balance, we work better together. If the pelvis is balanced, the
Mhm.
body's more functional. So kind of our studio symbol is literally a pelvis because when that is balanced, things are more functional. When we as teachers are balanced, we work as a community more balanced. So I love that the students learn about themselves and learn about the three levels of the pelvis and
Mhm.
that they know that okay we to open the mid pelvis we do asymmetrical poses like that is so exciting that they have that knowledge. And then it goes back to feeling empowered and self-advocacy. So like I remember a student telling me this story after that I'm constantly talking about when you're birthing, we don't want the legs externally rotated. And she said she was birthing and she just yelled at her husband, "Don't open my legs like that." And he's like, "Okay, okay." And afterwards, he's like, "What was that about?" She's like, "I don't even remember saying it." But like it was so ingrained that it just
Wow.
came out like that. That's a win to me.
That's a
that
huge
she
win.
knew her body.
Absolutely. That's awesome. Do you have one or two tips or tricks that you like to use for your students to help them with internal rotation specifically in any pose or any movement?
Well, I make up a lot of poses because a lot of
Okay.
yoga poses are not.
They don't do
I
it.
mean, we have Virasana, but
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to
I
make
love
up your
that.
own.
we make up a
Absolutely.
lot. So I'll do something where we'll be on all fours and their hands are on blocks. I think of blocks as extensions of their arms. Their knees are about hip distance, and then they'll take their heels out and their knees. They're not squeezing their knees together, so they're about hip distance, but they're feeling that. We do a lot of 90-90. And then there's two poses based on this little ode to my musical theater days. One I call the Bob Fosse pose. So it's because for those that don't know, he's a choreographer that didn't actually have a lot of external rotation. He had a lot of internal rotation. So like he did Sweet Charity, he did Chicago, Cabaret, so you'll notice in those choreography a lot of internal rotation.
Yeah,
So
like
it's like
their
a
knees and
wide,
they're like kicking their legs off to their heels off to
yeah.
the side kind of thing.
So it's a wide leg, almost like Prasarita Padottanasana, but we're internally rotated. So years ago, when I did the show Sweet Charity, there's a song called Big Spender, where you have this bar, and my position was my arms were on the bar, and my legs are wide, and my feet were internally rotated. And so that's the Bob Fosse pose. And then we turn it into Deb's pyramid, where your legs are still internally rotated. Your hips are pulling back and your arms are reaching forward like down dog. So it's like
Nice.
Prasarita Padottanasana with internal rotation and then a down dog. So we can lift and
Ooh.
widen the sit bones, get the tailbone up. So now we get actually the posterior pelvic floor gets a really good stretch, which tends to be really tight, tailbone
Yes.
pain. And then you get a nice elongation of the spine.
Ooh.
And I find it easier for people to lengthen their back that way with their legs wide. And you can have your
Yes.
knees a little
Yeah,
bent. So that's the Deb's
absolutely.
pyramid. So I make up poses.
I love it.
Oh, I love that so much. Absolutely. I'm totally doing that tomorrow.
Deb, I got a question about when you were talking just now about like your studio and kind of the symbolism and the balance and the community you're creating. So this is really fascinating for me because you've been in business for so many years, but yet you're only seeing your students for, a few months at a time and then
Yes.
they leave. So how do you keep that
That's a
community
great question.
going?
It's hard. We do something called circle time at the beginning of every class, pre and postnatal, where they introduce themselves, they say their name, how far they're along, aches, pains, issues. So I actually take what they say to create class on the spot because I want to make sure I'm addressing their needs. But people also get to know each other because they're introducing themselves every class. I also do a class picture at the end, which are optional, and it's like a little video, and then I put it on our stories. And then we have what we call leader of the pack. So the person that's furthest along gets their picture taken. And like last week, there was somebody who's 38 weeks. She's been coming since week 12, and she's like, "Oh my God, I'm leader of the pack." So
Oh,
little like symbols of, I want to call it success, of just like progress.
yeah, like
Yeah.
steps in this.
Yeah, little steps. And saying,
Consistency.
yeah, and
Yes.
so we do that in not everyone does the class picture, but all the teachers are supposed to do leader of the pack. And it just makes people look at their journey and reflect like, oh my God, I've been here since week 12. And then the person that's week like 18 would be like, wow, I'm gonna be leader of the pack. And then all of a sudden they are like, so
Yeah.
I try through the introduction and those little symbols. And what's funny is I had a student come back after she did prenatal and then postnatal and then thought she's like, oh, I'm going to go to a regular studio and try that. And then she came back. She's like, they didn't ask me anything. They just started class. And I'm like, no, they don't usually.
No,
But she,
Yeah.
exactly.
but she had thought that was how all yoga studios were.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, so that's how we try to work on building community.
And then, so you said your mom was in marketing, right? And so your mom was like, "Hey, this is a great little niche for you to go into." So with this kind of pathway down, like how did you get started to be known as this is a place you come when you're, prenatal and postnatal for pregnancy for yoga?
Oh, that's a really great question. So because I opened a studio focused just on this, my goal was one, I didn't want to compete with the big studios. And we offered, no, this is now 2002. There was not anything like this in New York. But we offered prenatal classes at prime times where regular yoga studios were not going to do that
Right.
because they weren't going to have the clientele.
Right.
So that helped people find us. And then again, 2002, internet was very different than it is now. Like social media was just, a baby. So I just really, my focus was offer the best I could. So that's when I'm like, okay, I need to become a doula. I need to become a Lamaze teacher. I needed to be the person that knew as much as I could. And so I think it became word of mouth in the beginning and honestly convenience, the time. And for those that know New York City, I happen to have chosen a very well located area. We're on 72nd Street, which has prime train stops. So along the west side, we have the 1, 2, 3, which is prime, and then further down the B and C. And then we have a crosstown bus. So it's easy to get to. So I had easy location, really important times for people that just finished work. They can't go to the noon classes, because that's what most places. And I just positioned myself as educated as I could. I think those are the things.
So question now. So you started in 2002 with your studio. Come 2020.
That was so hard. So listening to NPR, I was starting to see it coming ahead, like in January. I was like, oh, this is going to be a problem. And we actually started hybrid classes in February.
That's amazing.
I started to get the sense that people were getting a little squishy about what was going on. So I had already set up, I knew how to use Zoom. I was really I had that savviness.
I was going to say you're tech savvy. That's impressive.
I'm tech savvy for being almost 52. I'm tech savvy. So I knew how to use Zoom already. I started playing with how the camera's going to be on me. And so I still remember like that Friday, I remember leaving the studio and be like, oh, okay, we're probably, what was it, like March 13th or something in there. And I remember leaving the studio and saying, okay, we're probably gonna be closed for like a week or two.
Right.
And by the time I got from Penn Station to South Orange, I got a call from my kids' schools that we are closed indefinitely. And I'm like, what does that mean?
Exactly. Yes.
Yep.
So I just switched everything online because I had already figured out I need to send the link 10 minutes early. I know how to use Zoom. I already know that I need to have, I need to talk to the camera, but I was also a performer, so I was comfortable in front of a camera.
Thank goodness, right? That was a hard thing to do too, for not being comfortable in front of a camera at all, to trying to just be like, don't worry that it's a camera, Yeah,
I already felt comfortable talking to the screen. I did have to pare down the teachers.
Yeah.
Where I went from a full staff, I had to put everyone on leave, and I think there was myself, one other main teacher, and then one of my amazing teachers. She's like, I will volunteer my time because I'm like, our class, everything's going to drop.
Yeah.
So it was the three of us, and it was hard because my kids were online learning. Online. I don't even know what we can call it learning.
Right.
They were on a screen.
Yeah.
My husband's a therapist, so he was trying to do therapy sessions in like the laundry room. Luckily we have a big enough house that I created a little studio space. I actually still teach one of my classes on Tuesdays just in my studio space at home, so I don't have to go into the city. And it worked. We actually still keep every day one online class. So like today there was an online class just online. Tuesdays there's just an online. And then every other we do a hybrid. And so we're still connecting to people online and in person. And honestly, the teacher training going online turned out to be one of the best things that we'd ever done.
100% agree with you. We did that too. And a lot of people are, like, oh, no, you can't teach yoga online. It's like some of the best teachers that I've trained are teachers that I have never met in person.
Absolutely. And so it's exact same curriculum. Like I'm still as rigorous.
Yep.
They do a lot of teaching. We actually utilize the breakout rooms for discussions and small group teaching.
Yep.
But it opened up before. I was running around the country doing trainings in Charlotte and then in DC and now that I can do it online, like we just finished a training last weekend and I had a student from South Korea and and a student from Dubai. I just got a
Amazing.
teacher training application yesterday from someone from Kuwait. Like this wouldn't have
Wow.
happened.
Nice.
Right.
And it's exciting to see them bring this to their communities. That's well outside of what I could have done. So it was very hard. I'm appreciative that I got two PPPs, from
Yeah.
for being a business. That really helped. But it was a shift, but we weathered it and we actually were able to grow
That's
from
amazing,
it.
Deb. That is like such a true testament to what you're doing in the community and like, finding that niche market, that market that was so like underdeveloped, not understood, and it was just these couple of little things that 200-hour teachings may or may not even talk about.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I find when I did my 95-hour kids training and I would, I wrote the curriculum and I started teaching it, I taught it to two people that didn't have a 200-hour. And that was really difficult. And I noticed that like my 95-hour was more like a 295-hour because it was like I added in the kids' information to a basis foundation because I just really, in my opinion, if someone wanted to learn how to teach kids yoga, I was going to do the best I could with what I had,
Right.
kind of like what you said, like I'm going to do the best. I'm going to know what I can know and do the best with what I've got.
I know that there are other prenatal trainings that will say, like, you don't need to have a 200-hour and you can join us. And I know I could make more money if I did that.
But
But I
I
actually
agree.
think it's a detriment because then I'm holding back those
Yeah,
that have that foundation. And then I'm also not being able to teach them as much as I think they can know and should know.
100%.
So
Yeah.
I'm going against financial wishes of my accountant, but
But that's
I'm
exactly what you
holding
should do,
integrity.
Deb, because that's the integrity and that's your brand, right? And that's the
Yeah.
balance that you have. Like you have to
Yeah.
put those into place. And I'll tell you, the training that I led had two people that did not have a 200 together. So it wasn't like the good thing is that I didn't have to, take people that had a 200 and dumb it down, right? Or not get them the information they wanted. But now I lead 300-hour trainings and it's like I look at it completely differently than the way I used to. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact of like branching outside of yoga and doing other trainings like the gyrotonic, like doing Pilates, doing spin, doing personal training, doing stretch, all these different modalities that now it's like opened up my eyes to saying like, okay, if this person can't do this posture, can't do this, then what are my other tools that I have in my toolbox that I can
Yes.
access, right? Take gravity out of it, put them on a reformer, put them on a tower, do this, do that. And it makes me feel more confident to be able to teach other people to think outside the box, right? To not just be
Absolutely.
stuck in one way of doing things.
100%. That's where the creativity comes in. I find really interesting. It's like when I do hit a problem, I'd be like, okay, what can I do? What do I know? What props can I start to pull in? Do I need to go to the wall? Do we need to do this first without gravity on the ground? I actually love that. That's where
Yeah.
my little geeky mind gets excited.
I know, me too. Nora and I are like that too. It's like, ooh, did you see this? Did you see this? Look at this client that I have over here. Like, how can I make them feel this better? Or how come I can't get this to happen in the body, right? How do I make them feel this way?
Mhm.
Yes. Or, oh my God, did you see what I just got Harry to do?
Yes. Oh my gosh, we get so excited when we have clients. We've got this one client, a couple that we share, and Nora teaches Harry, who has Parkinson's, and then I teach Anne, who has, she's blind. She went blind like 3 years ago. And
Wow.
Anne was a woman that never worked out a day in her life. Harry was in the military, very, very super active. What's crazy is that they're both each other's caretakers.
Mhm.
And she's blind and he has Parkinson's. But they started training together with the two of us. So we see them at the same time. And Nora's been doing gyrotonic because gyrotonic for Parkinson's patients is like incredible, right? And then I've been doing Pilates with Anne. And then now we're introducing yoga so that she can go take like a gentle yoga class. And just to see them and how much they're growing and how much they're learning and they're evolving within themselves. Like Anne's lost a ton of weight. She feels better. She's like, I tell everybody that Pilates is the most amazing thing. And I really wish I'd done it a long time ago, and now teaching her how to breathe and just adding all these different elements of like, you can own your body. Don't look outside of yourself. Look within yourself.
Mm-hmm. Oh
Sorry.
my gosh, that's great.
I get so excited about that. I had to train Harry the other day because Anne wasn't feeling well. And she's like, can Harry just train with you? And I'm like, all right. So I put Harry through the ringer. He was like, you're working me hard. And I go, I'm working you hard because you can do it. And I'm
I
like,
love
you
that.
can do it. It's so exciting. Well, I mean, we didn't ask the same questions that we normally do. Like we asked the origin story, that we didn't ask the like normal questions, but I really love this conversation. Like it's just so wonderful to kind of hear how you've taken what you know about yoga and been able to take it to a marketplace of people that need it more than they'll ever know.
Yeah, you said something earlier that I thought was really just fantastic and talked about using yoga to add balance rather than taking it away. Do you have anything else that you want to add to that? I love that idea.
Oh gosh. No, I feel like we just want to examine what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Yeah.
I just remind my teachers that too all the time. Like, well, why are you introducing that pose? How is that either building to a pose that we're working on or adding to what we want the pregnant body to find that balance? So thinking, that's really critical thinking.
Yeah,
absolutely. I love that.
Well, even when you said earlier, like, oh, I'm probably going to, people aren't going to agree with me that you demo. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, especially because you know your audience. You know what I mean? Like, that's the bottom line. Like, you're not going to demo to a bunch of advanced yogis that know how to do the posture, right?
Right.
You're going to demo because they need to see.
And hear, yeah.
I'm a verbal, I'm an auditory, and I'm a visual learner, right? Like there's all those ways of learning in your body. You're just helping them imprint it more by demoing. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And if anybody has anything to say about it, they can go fuck off, because I feel like it's the most important thing to know your audience and to be able to teach to the people that are in the room. It doesn't matter about what your teacher said to you. You can learn all the like formulas and basics and the information, but it really is, how do you bring it to the table? How do you come and co-create?
Wonderful. I love that. Thank you.
Sorry, everybody can fuck off, right? Well, Deb, this was such a great conversation. I love the fact, we didn't even talk about the fact that you have got a podcast. Tell our listeners about your podcast so we can make sure that they check it out.
Thank you so much. So it's called Yoga Birth Babies. I will definitely say it's more birth babies than yoga. When it started, it was a little more prenatal. The part that's, I guess, yoga-ish is I talk a lot. I have guests that will talk a lot about kind of the biomechanics and anatomy. That's one of my favorite things, as you probably can tell. But it really supports people during pregnancy. And we talk about birth, breastfeeding, early parenthood, postpartum. I really try to address that whole journey. And if people are interested in that journey, or if people that are listening are actually pregnant, I think they're getting a lot of support from that.
That's awesome. That is fantastic. Deb, we've made another friend in the state of New Jersey. I'm so excited. Know that, if we come to New York or New Jersey, we're going to come to see you. Come down to San Antonio. We'd love to have you come down here. We should totally look at like having you come in and lead a little trainings for us too.
Oh my God, that would be so much fun.
But you definitely, definitely have a friends down here forever. That's one thing I love about yoga, is it connects people like quickly, deeply, and lifelong.
Thank you.
Yes,
I really enjoyed this.
Good.
Thank you so much for doing what you're doing, because I believe that you're really servicing an underserviced population and really educating in a space that we need more education and more attention. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. And what a great conversation. So thank you for this opportunity.
This was so fun. Deb, tell everybody where they can find you.
PrenatalyyogaCenter.com is the website. And then all our social media is Prenatal Yoga Center. We're on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. Not kind of Facebook. I don't really pay attention to it, but
Me neither. Me neither. It's so bad.
Where my podcast, even Pinterest are on. But yeah, find me, Prenatal Yoga Center.
Are you doing TikTok?
Oh yeah, TikTok. I forgot. I'm on TikTok.
I'm impressed. Hey, you said you're almost 52. I'm 50. The whole social media thing is still kind of like a bizarro world for me. So I do the best I can with what I got.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks, Deb. And I can't wait to talk to you again because we all know that yoga is constantly changing our lives, and we'll definitely have to catch up again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes, thank you.